away from me.
It's a,
Oh, okay.
it's a tail wagging dog. It's the dog, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what you should do, maybe.
Commissioners, staff, about to get started. Thank you.
Right, all right. We had some important business to do.
Good to go. Okay, we hit recording and it started. So hello, welcome everyone to the March meeting of the Sustainability and Climate Commission. Welcome commissioners, welcome staff. There'll be an opportunity for us to do a quick round of introductions, but for the record, I'm Vivian Satterfield. I'm your Chief Sustainability Officer. Want to acknowledge that this is the end to Ramadan and want to wish a happy Eid to all who celebrate. And that's why also we have one of our co-chairs presiding over our meeting this evening. We have a number of commissioners who are joining us virtually today. And so for those of you who are in the midst of end of season testing or looking forward to spring break, best of luck to all of you with that, and wishing anyone safe travels for that's coming up. I'll go ahead and keep my comments short and just hand it over to Co-Chair Jose.
Thank you very much, Vivian. I'm Jose Gamero Georgeson, he, him, L pronouns. Next slide, please. First, as always, our meeting agenda overview. As you can see, these are the things we'll be doing today. You hear me? Okay. We're gonna have a briefing on municipal energy strategy and discussion around that. That's the main part of the agenda today. And how the commission can advance this work in the future. Next slide, please. And we'll start with our regular meeting introductions and reminders. Next slide. We'll review some of the notes about this meeting and our working agreements. Next slide. Okay. Notes about this meeting. Like always, the meeting is being recorded via Zoom, will be posted online for transparencies. Please make sure you check your Zoom name and that it's reflects your title. Please shorten it to COMM period or alt period. We have a lot of people online today, so more important than ever that we all do our Zoom hands if you're in the room, so that I can keep track of who's asking to speak. And we'll have public comment, just a few, and I'll call on them. And as always, all the materials can be found online at the web page. And thank you, Wing, for being here, for tech help if anything arises. Next slide, please. Working agreements. Who wants to read the bolded sections out loud? Who's not chewing? Yeah, Commissioner Leah.
Commissioner Leah, pronouns she, her. Number 1, speak with clarity and focus. Share your thoughts truthfully and succinctly, staying on topic and respecting time limits and agenda allocations. Did you want me to read the whole thing? Or
Just the bold
the
parts.
bold parts? Okay. Wait, why am I talking? Assume good intentions, but attend to impact. Be willing to make mistakes and be forgiving of those who do. Allow for and appreciate disagreement of opinions, ideas, methods respectfully. Build on other people's ideas. We value participation both in person and virtual.
Thank you, Commissioner Leah. Next slide, please. Okay, now on to public comment. Next slide. Okay. People who are giving public comment, remind you to please say your name, pronouns, and any relevant roles you'd like to share. And you have 3 minutes. The first person is Darlene Sherman from the 350 PDX transportation team. Sent us a letter. Is Darlene here as well? No? Okay. Well, Darlene sent us a letter. I'm sure that will go out to us in our next high five or on the follow-up. And also we put on the Zoom chat now, and it'll be on the web page as always. But there's no one here to give public comment in person or over Zoom, so we'll just move on to commission updates. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Commission updates. We have a few commission updates. First, I'd like to invite back the Chief Sustainability Officer, Vivian Satterfield, to give her CSO report.
Thank you, Co-Chair Jose. All right, y'all. Vivian Satterfield, CSO. I have a number of updates for you all, so please bear with me. And we'll have time for a little bit of questions or discussion afterwards. First of all, just a gentle reminder, truly gently, just for disclosure, we do want to encourage you all having the ability to be able to reach out to staff within the different service areas and bureaus, but please do give us the courtesy of a heads up just so that we can help manage some of the conversation and relationships and also staff level expectation when interacting with you all. And so please just include Elaine at minimum, or Elaine and myself when there is going to be outreach to staff. The legislative session recap. I know a number of you were very, very deep in Oregon's legislative session. And so I want to just offer a brief highlight and want to appreciate staff for ensuring that I can give you an accurate summary of what occurred during the short session. The top line takeaway that I want to highlight for you all is that it really did little to advance climate and clean energy priorities. I think there's a lot of still ongoing discussion around how short session is designed and how it can help produce meaningful policy. And so I think there's strong signals that we can see more robust policy indicators for the upcoming regular session. But some of the bills that I wanted to highlight, whether it's been brought up in discussion in this space or relevant to topics that I've heard the commission discussed, is there are some bills that did advance to Governor Kotek for her consideration to sign. One is a solar consumer protections bill. That was House Bill 4029. This is a positive thing to require standard contract language, disclosures, and other contract licensing to ensure that these are reputable companies who are doing some of the outreach and door knocking and installing solar panels on folks' homes. I also wanted to highlight the passage of House Bill 4100. Which is related to the critical energy infrastructure, the CEI hub safety and oversight. This will require owners or operators of those bulk oils or liquid fuel terminals to obtain a certificate of financial responsibility from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. This is of critical importance to the CEI hub. And then a lot of conversation happened around transportation, and a transportation bill that did pass is Senate Bill 1599. It was one of the most hotly debated bills in session, and I know that some of the folks who have a lot of transportation expertise on staff would be happy to talk to you about any of the machinations regarding statewide transportation as that proceeds forward. But there's a whole suite of bills that did not advance. And I just wanted to highlight a few because you've either seen them in the news or they've been brought up in this space. A bill that did not advance is Senate Bill 1541, which is known as the Climate Superfund or Make Polluters Pay bill that was championed. I know that Commissioner Damon has brought up this bill in the past. Another one that did not pass was House Bill 4080. This would allow for either plug-in solar or balcony solar to be allowed. We're likely going to see that come back in future sessions, however. And then you may have read a bit in the news around the idea of autonomous vehicles being allowed to operate in the state of Oregon and then what the city of Portland would potentially do. That bill also did not pass, but I do not believe that issue will be going away. So that's just a little sneak, a little preview of kind of, not preview, that's actually a debrief is what that is, of what happened in this last legislative session. Moving on from there, want to just offer another plug for Earth Day. The city's flagship event is Earth in Motion, which will be happening on Saturday, April 11th from 12 to 3. Myself, the mayor, and then our District 1 councilors will all have a short speaking time at the very top of that event at noon. There's also a role for the Sustainability and Climate Commission to play, especially in developing and putting forward that youth framework and debuting that to the public and having some of their feedback on it. So that's just a reminder to submit your worksheet. Please do that by Sunday so we can work to refine that in preparation for the Earth in Motion event. And one of the final things that I want to highlight for you is the city auditor did release a climate justice audit. We will be looking forward to the city auditor actually coming to the Sustainability and Climate Commission in April. But but Elaine has sent out the links in the weekly high five, and then we'll do so again because we would like you to read the report and the city administrator's response. The commission also will have some discussion in the April 16th meeting, and we're looking for some action to come out of that space. So please, please, please read the report. It is succinct, and I think it will illuminate many of the things that you've been hearing about, especially with the history of climate action planning for the city. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Vivian. Jose Guillermo Georgeson, co-chair again. I will say, every short session legislative debrief feels like a long session preview. So I don't think that was too much of a misnomer there. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of the CSO's report? Okay, seeing none, I'll just go over some of the updates from some of the meetings we've had. The executive session, we did discuss the feedback and tested how new document technology would go forward in the bylaws committee, and we continued working on the agenda. And the bylaws committee had to cancel the March meeting due to lack of quorum. Part of that was my fault because I also did not show up. Some Microsoft calendar and my calendar didn't work so well this time. They have in the past, but I fixed that and just putting everything in manually. But we will be rescheduling them to occur the first Wednesday of every month going forward. And we should still be on track to bring the full bylaws to the commission for adoption in May. The part to the youth retreat, thank you for coming and thank you for the youth member for teaching us. We're looking forward to the framework that comes out of that they're putting together. But like Vivian said, please send Elaine your worksheets by Sunday if you haven't shared them yet. Any questions about any of that? Okay, seeing none. Next slide, please. Next, we'll move right into our briefing tonight on the municipal energy strategy. Next slide, please. So tonight we have members from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability Climate Team to discuss the municipal energy strategy and the next steps the commission can take. So I want to introduce Interim Climate Policy and Programs Manager Bing Mason, Buildings and Energy Program Manager Paul Hawkins, and Senior Climate Policy Analyst Kyle Diesner, which you should all remember. So I'll hand it over to Bing and his team. Take it away.
Technology question for you. Should I push something here? Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to come out and say hello to the Sustainability and Climate Commission. Again, Ben Mason for the record, he, him pronouns, with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, with the city and working on sustainability since 2007. So a long timer. Some of you meeting tonight, and some of you have known for decades. So it's great to have an opportunity to say hello in person, and to those who are online as well. So in addition to filling in for Andrea Jacob as the climate team's manager, I'm also a building decarbonization policy lead for the city. Many of you know Ingrid Fish. She's the transportation decarb policy lead. So you can think of us as this two arms on the same policy body, I guess, in a lot of ways. And I think that's all I wanted to say, just to say hello and introduce myself in this role. As a climate team manager, I am serving through the end of June, and then we expect Andrea to be back in her role. She's filling in as a chief of staff to DCA Donnie Oliveira. With that, I'll turn it over to Paul.
Awesome. Thank you all. So I'm here today to talk about a municipal energy strategy. My name is Paul Hawkins. I'm the Buildings and Energy Program Manager at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And I think I'll just sort of qualify this presentation a little bit and say that I wear a hat internally at the city. I work across various city bureaus on really anything energy and buildings related that the city undertakes. So that's, things like retrofits or on-site solar. And so that's one of the many hats that I wear. And I want to give you a little bit of insight to that today. But first, I want to also say, give Kyle Diesner a couple minutes here or words to just say hello and introduce yourself before I get started.
Hi,
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here and see you all again. My name is Kyle Diesner, Climate Policy Analyst at BPS. I'm going to share some data with you on city operations as part of the discussion around the energy strategy. So similar to what I've shared previously community-wide, but focused just on our city operations.
Okay, next slide. So here's just a high-level overview. This is meant to take up the meat of our discussion today. So first, why a municipal energy strategy? This is really the context for today, the level setting, the sort of history of how we got here. The second part is what Kyle will really speak to in depth is our city operations data and our energy consumption as a city. We'll have our break in the middle there and come back for really the what. Like what am I talking about here as a municipal energy strategy will be the meat of the conversation. And then some open dialogue really around potential commission actions and some policy and advocacy and advisory roles. Next slide. Yeah, so why a municipal energy strategy? The emphasis of today's content is really going to be on our internal operations, and this is what I'm calling our municipal strategy. And so I'll share my perspective on the city's own energy management and why I see it as a key part of the energy transition and in need of a reboot. I'm going to focus on our internal operations because I do really believe that the city is making meaningful progress in our community through the Portland Clean Energy Fund, investing directly into the homes and the businesses and the climate in Portland. Next slide. So yeah, as we start to focus in on this strategy, I put together a problem statement that I wanted to share with you all, that the city of Portland's aging facilities are not well positioned to advance the clean energy transition and to mitigate this sort of poly crisis that we're looking at with persistent greenhouse gas emissions, energy affordability, and extreme weather events. Okay, so let's keep going. This is pretty high level utility decarbonization. This should be fairly familiar to you all at this point, but I think we're very fortunate in Oregon that state laws really mandate emission reduction, both from the electricity supply and from the fossil fuels in our state. So House Bill 2021 requires our electric utilities to reduce their emissions 80% in the next 4 years by 2030, and then 100% by 2040. The Climate Protection Program, similarly, is designed to reduce emissions from fossil fuels, so 50% by 2035 and 90% by 2050. Sorry, I got more on that slide. Yeah. Really, the takeaway is that large-scale emissions-free energy supply is going to be the hallmark of the next decade. But most of this work, the core of this work, is going to be done by utilities and by the regulators, the Oregon Public Utility Commission and the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. Before I move on from this slide, I wanted to also just mention a small part of House Bill 2021 that included this provision to create a community green tariff. So I think it was Commissioner Galen asked about this at the last meeting. And so this green tariff idea was action item E1 of our climate emergency work plan. This envisioned a sort of green energy surcharge that would help move our entire community to 100% renewable energy ahead of state mandates. Unfortunately, due to sort of compounding issues with cost and utility procurement, it became untenable. So I don't want to get sidetracked necessarily with our community green tariff, but I wanted to mention it because it's important context here that without a green tariff, like without this action item E1, it begs the question, what can the city do in the immediate term, in the near term, to move our clean energy transition forward? And that's kind of where a lot of this work came from initially. So the conversation we'll have today outlines those immediate, near-term, direct actions that I think the city can take. Now we can, yeah, next slide. Okay, so if you're following any energy news in local media outlets, you have probably seen some pretty concerning headlines that our utilities are behind on meeting their emissions reduction mandates, that our region does not really have the electrical transmission capacity that we need, or that data centers are straining the grid. All of these are very critical components of the energy transition, but really the city's role there is an advocacy role. I've represented each of these concepts on the right-hand side here as sort of peripheral with dashed lines. Instead, what I really want to focus on is what's within our direct sphere of influence, and that's our municipal energy use. So the city doesn't have direct influence over hyperscale data centers, particularly as they're occurring in other communities. Similarly, we don't have direct influence over the clean energy supply that our utilities will deliver, or the energy delivery element of that. Rather, the city is actually the demand side of this equation. And I want to really emphasize this. We're the consumers of energy, and we really need to be better consumers and stewards of that energy consumption. So the city operates hundreds of facilities across Portland. And each one of these facilities, like the building we're sitting in today, represents an opportunity to improve our energy management through energy efficiency, or adding on-site renewables, or shifting our consumption with battery storage or demand response. If you're deeper into the news, or if you're really an energy nerd like I am, you have probably heard more and more talk about virtual power plants and microgrids. So just to sort of articulate that concept, imagine a connected portfolio of city buildings and city facilities that function as community hubs that can respond to our grid stress, that help keep our bills lower, that can provide safe haven during power outages. That's sort of what I'm envisioning here. So just to recap, before we go a little further, Portland is not going to be able to host massive solar arrays within our city limits. We're very unlikely to see really high voltage transmission coming through the middle of our city. And we're probably not going to see hyperscale data centers in city limits either. Our most direct contributions to the energy transition are on the demand side and the energy consumption. And I think there's a lot of work to be done.
Quick question. Do you
Yeah.
want questions as they come up, or do you want to wait till the end?
I can take maybe clarifying questions during, but there's a lot of time baked in here for Q&A. So
I can wait.
yes, and both.
Okay.
Yeah, both and. Okay, yeah, next slide. So what does our portfolio of buildings and facilities really look like? One important takeaway from this slide before I dive in is that each bureau manages their own portfolio of facilities. The exception to that is the Bureau of Fleet and Facilities, which I've listed first. So Fleet and Facilities manages 16 buildings. It's mostly the downtown offices like this building and City Hall, but also the police facilities and emergency response facilities. Just going down the list, Parks manages 11 community centers and pools. They manage 3 music and dance halls and something like 500 other small maintenance facilities and logistics and operation buildings. Our Fire Bureau has 31 fire stations that they manage, a training center, a logistics center, and a maintenance facility. Spectator Venues individually manages sort of the Moda Center that you think about, or the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, the Schnitzer Concert Hall. Our Portland Water Bureau has an operations building and a maintenance building and water delivery buildings and pump stations throughout the city. Environmental Services has multiple wastewater treatment plants, a water quality lab and pumping throughout the city. And finally, the Bureau of Transportation has a maintenance facility and various garages. So this decentralized structure is a bit of a carryover from our old form of government, in the fact that each bureau had an individual budget and an individual portfolio under a city councilor that would change and cycle through. Today, we don't really take a holistic view of our operations and our energy management. A fire employee with a specialization in HVAC would never work on a parks facility. So I've sort of linked in the bottom right here. If you really want to go deep into our asset and report, it's there. That's where all of this information on the slide came from. But that asset report is actually extremely detailed. It's much broader than buildings and facilities. It's like green infrastructure and sewers and streets and includes asset conditions and funding gaps. So there's a lot of information there, but I wanted to just give you a snapshot of our city facilities. Go to the next slide here. So Portland has envisioned a carbon-free municipal portfolio. Action item B2 of the Climate Emergency Work Plan really outlines this importance of eliminating carbon from our city operations. And it also outlines the need for a revamped city green building policy. I also want to point a little further back to 2018. Mayor Wheeler then signed onto a C40 cities climate leadership declaration to have all municipal buildings be net zero by 2030. It also went as far to say we need a roadmap and a suite of supporting incentives and programs to get to that net zero portfolio. I'll be frank here that it's my opinion that there's a lot of work to do to make progress on these commitments. Next slide. Fortunately, we do have pretty strong policy guidance and direction adopted by the city. So on the left-hand side here, I want to highlight our core value of fiscal responsibility. Really that every budget decision focuses on fiscal resiliency and climate action and equity and the needs of our most vulnerable. I think we have a fiscal responsibility to rethink and improve the management of our energy use and how it can prioritize climate action. I also want to flag the renewable energy resolution from 2017 here that outlines energy efficiency as our priority, dating all the way back to 1979 when the city released its first energy plan. The resolution also speaks directly to the value of demand response, energy storage, on-site renewables, and minimizing fossil fuels. What's outlined here is really a back to basics approach. We need to get our own house in order and our own operations in order. And I think we owe it to our community to be better stewards of public dollars and to meaningfully contribute to the energy transition. So with that, I feel like I've primed our conversation today. We're going to transition to sort of Q&A and discussion before we go into really the details of our energy consumption with Kyle. So yeah, next slide is just a Q&A and discussion. I'm happy to really speak to anything that I hit so far.
Commissioner Greg, do you still have your question? Go ahead.
Commissioner Greg Racinas, thank you, thank you, Paul, for the explanation. I actually have several questions, but I guess I'll start with the biggest one that comes to mind. I guess not to be sort of off-putting, but you said sort of our house is not in order as a city, kind of how we operate. It's 2026, and the statement from Mayor Wheeler was 8 years ago. Why not? Why are we not? Why are we still so siloed or still not working together toward this? Why aren't we farther along, in your opinion, down that road? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I think I'll say that we have made progress in terms of transitioning and being prepared to take these next steps. You know, I think I'm being sort of propositional today in terms of pointing out an opportunity for action. I think our city is well positioned, and the charter change and transition that we've had, the new administrator, I think we have big opportunities. I think I'll just say resourcing is a big part of it. And I think maybe I'll point to the climate justice audit just a little bit and a sneak preview of what's to come next month.
Yeah, hi. Well, hardly know where to begin, but I will restrict myself to just one question, and if there's time, you know, we can go maybe and pick up a couple of others. I would like to just observe, at the risk of seriously dating myself, that I carried that first 1979 municipal energy plan through the city council during Neil Goldschmidt's last day as a mayor before he took off for DC and the Department of Transportation, and the rest of us all trailed along behind him and failed miserably at doing transportation energy efficiency measures in the last 18 months of Jimmy Carter's administration. Okay, that's the ancient history. So I want to go back to where you guys both started, which is with the expectation or the aspiration, I guess, that the electric utilities serving the city of Portland meet their House Bill 2021 targets, notwithstanding that being able to do so gets, harder and harder as loads grow rapidly. On the other hand, technologies are also evolving very rapidly. So, it's not impossible for us to do this. It will take a lot of things sort of falling into place, but it will also take us capturing as much energy efficiency as we can between now and when, those two lines collide somewhere out in the future under, different administrations. And one of the ways we do this is to not, I guess, elide past the virtual power plant option that our electric utilities have. And I guess I wonder whether you think it would be a good idea for this commission to ask both of our electric utilities to come and talk to us on a fairly regular basis about the progress that they're making in deploying load center generation, load center storage, and load center controls and demand management capabilities. And I ask this in part because I started asking that question when I was with the state commission. And so far, the answers that I have gotten have been mostly wait till next year kinds of answers. We've got a demo here, we've got a demo there. The utilities have a bunch of demos, but they're pretty slow about scaling up from demos to actual city programs. And I cannot quite figure out why. Maybe they're just distracted by transmission, nightmares at night. But I think this is an area where this commission could apply a little, friendly but unmistakable pressure on the electric utilities to move, with greater dispatch in developing those load center resources. And I would just add one other observation, because I'm doing a lot of work on Western Transmission these days, that as far as I'm concerned, a utility that needs new transmission capacity but hasn't done its VPP work shouldn't get it. They should have to go and explain to their customers why their request for siting a new transmission line got turned down because they didn't do their work at home. So the question is, what do you think about this commission asking the utilities to come in and talk to us regularly about progress and actually show progress from point A to point B?
Commissioner Angus, just in the interest of not putting staff on the spot to answer a question, I will offer that I am extremely supportive of your suggestion that this would be an appropriate space and a very appropriate commission in order to ask the utilities to come and explain in greater detail what their plans are, as clearly as we've written in numerous progress reports for the climate emergency work plan. The city alone cannot reach our climate goals without their active partnership and participation. They're an absolutely necessary partner, and I think the Sustainability and Climate Commission is a very appropriate venue to continue that discussion, to have some more details, and to be able to hold them accountable.
Good, and I would like them to be able to, and you guys can help with this also, to be able to benchmark themselves against what's being done in other cities with other progressive utilities that are moving this needle a lot faster than they are.
So, what did the law dictate were the repercussions if they didn't meet the goals that the law mandated by the certain dates?
Yeah, it's a good question. House Bill 2021, the sort of penalties have not been fully decided at the Oregon Public Utility Commission. So that's still an open question mark of exactly what those penalties may be.
Yeah, if I can stick an oar in here, Commissioner, because I helped write that bill. We got to the penalties part, and everybody backed away from it like it was, I don't know, it was radioactive. And it is a little bit radioactive because, you know, it's a little hard to think what you can do. If you penalize them in some material way, will that limit their ability to both meet those goals and supply electricity? So it's a little tricky with finding ways to, as it were, penalize them. But one of the ways I think we can do it is by making it, you know, noticeable and visible when they're not progressing.
When did 21 pass?
2021.
That's what it
Yeah.
was.
I want to just jump in and take the moment to, again, re-articulate the idea. I don't want to get too distracted on, you know, our utilities progress and what happens at the commission. I'm really trying to focus our discussion today on the idea that we're the consumers of that power, and the utilities are going to supply it, they're going to deliver it to us. But the best thing we can really do as a city and even as residents is to manage our time of use when we're using energy and be able to shift our loads so that they don't have to build as much energy or as much transmission. That's what's going to keep our bills down. And that's the thing we really need to be focused on.
Commissioner Jessica?
Hi, yeah, Commissioner Jessica, District 1, she, her. Paul, I'm curious, when you speak there about time of use, is the city able to manage time of use in any of its own operations, especially when it comes to perhaps charging electric fleets that the city is managing, or any of that? I'm sure I feel very confident there are many incredibly energy intensive processes happening across the city's portfolio of buildings. So I see you're looking at Kyle. So I imagine there is an answer, either comical or confident, or a mixture. But yeah, curious if you could share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. I certainly think that we are doing a good job in certain places. For example, we participate in PGE's Energy Partner on Demand. So they come out and look at where you might be able to flex loads. Our city fleet team and the net zero electric vehicle strategy is certainly looking at that and having, you know, networked and the telematics there to ship the loads of electric vehicles. But again, this is happening sort of in isolation and in smaller silos, and it's not really rolled up as a big picture strategy or done in a really coordinated way citywide. And I think that's one of the points I want to make today.
Commissioner Damon?
Yeah, thanks. This is Commissioner Damon Montstory, they, them from District 1. Really appreciating getting to learn and deep dive into some of this stuff. And I have a question about the city assets and buildings and things like that. I know that you said that we're not going to be, you know, Portland doesn't have the capacity to sort of host like large solar arrays and things like that. But I'm wondering if you could kind of explain, it's something I always kind of struggle to explain as well, sort of like, what are the limitations on being able to do like sort of rooftop solar on a wide variety of different city buildings? Because we do have quite a lot of like larger buildings, like the sports arenas within the portfolio. And I'm just curious, like, how are we maximizing renewable energy generation in city assets, as well as energy efficiency measures? I know those things are highly valued by the city and have been for a long time, but I'm just kind of wondering what the snapshot of that is like. What is the capacity for us to be able to, especially in the context of these utilities not moving fast enough to bring on more clean energy to the grid? Check.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think the way I want to, I'm going to speak to this a bit later in the presentation, but I would argue that the deferred maintenance and existing condition of a lot of our facilities precludes on-site solar in a lot of cases. I would also say that, again, just capital budgets and the prioritization of work has pushed some of those opportunities down, and I don't think we have done a proper sort of solar analysis across all of our facilities in a long time. So I would name that as an opportunity.
We're gonna take these two more questions, but keep them brief so we can move on to the next section. Commissioner Nora?
Thank you. I really appreciate the breakdown in terms of time spent on behalf of city staff with advocacy and utility and other spaces, interest in focusing on municipal buildings and then city policy. And there were briefly some policy proposals or recommendations flashed on the screen that we're kind of touching on in this conversation, but I think are worth emphasizing in terms of the role of both municipal buildings, but also our state policies around building code requirements and otherwise, which I know has been many years of work, Ben and others. So I guess my question is, but both where are we in terms of trying to support municipal buildings in enrolling municipal buildings in aggregation and trying to accelerate, the use of virtual power plants while we continue to try to push our utilities further in accelerating and expanding their programs. What can we do on the city side of things to try to expand distributed resources, both within our building stock, but also through policy and kind of status update and future opportunities for that work?
I think that is the meat of our conversation that we're gonna spend a lot of time on today. I have sort of a 4-part proposal for you all today to really talk about how we can do that.
Amazing. Thank you.
Commissioner Stephanie?
Commissioner Stephanie Kaza, District 3, she, her. My question is more about this transition in our city council structure and working with the city administrator, and how is it going if the portfolios are still carrying over our old governance structure? Who is in charge of trying to match up our staffing structure with our governance structure? And is that something we can also lend some support or pressure to? Because that seems like a pretty major obstacle to coordinating our actions climate-wise. Thanks.
Commissioner Stephanie, again, in the interest of kind of answering the question so that staff don't have to offer their opinion on this, I do want to offer an awareness that there is a larger city asset management strategy. I would say that Council Vice President has led this conversation previously in her role as the co-chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and has gained a surprising amount of council support around addressing our infrastructure. This has been, I think, a very longstanding issue. It's been well highlighted by the city auditor. It's gained increasing awareness, and there's more alignment than not on doing something about it. Now, of course, we're entering into budget season, and what we're going to do and how much it's going to cost is, of course, those are the details that need to be had, but there is broad recognition more now than ever before that this is a clear priority. And every single conversation and work session that I've been listening to at City Council, whether it's talking about parks or otherwise maintenance and talking about infrastructure, is absolutely top of mind for our decision makers.
That's very heartening. I'm glad to know where things stand.
Okay, now we can move on to operational energy use.
All right, great. I will promise to keep this short so we can get into this meaty discussion, which is much more exciting than my data, but is a bit foundational to this conversation. So we thought it was appropriate to share it with you. Next slide. So, I'm a climate policy analyst. I presented to you previously on emissions. So I thought emissions was a good place to ground this conversation from. So you can see our buildings and facilities are the bulk of our city operational emissions. And that includes buildings like this, but also, our pump stations and our wastewater treatment plant and our water distribution system. So it really includes infrastructure as well. Those building emissions have declined 27% since 2006-07, largely due to efficiency and improvements in renewables in our grid mix. The next biggest chunk there is our vehicle fleet at 17%. And that, has come down quite a bit more at 32%, pretty steadily declining our emissions from the vehicle fleet due to the work of our city fleet that has invested a lot in electrification and decarbonization through renewable fuels. And importantly, more efficient vehicles. So that's been a big source of the reductions there. And we're tracking all of our fuel use on every vehicle, how the mileage they're driving, and that has really allowed us to improve the efficiency of the fleet overall. The next section there is on our street light and traffic signals at 7%. And that is, yes, stay there. Those have come down 76% since 0607 due to our investments in LED street lighting and LED traffic signals. That is probably, unless there are new lighting technologies that come along, I think we've gotten a lot of the reductions that we can out of that little wedge there. The remaining are from our transit fleet, but for the city, just so you guys are aware, our transit fleet is just our streetcar and our aerial tram. We do not operate the buses or the light rail here in the city. And then solid waste and fugitive emissions are also a small share of those overall.
Clarification. Question?
Go ahead.
Just wanted to be to that last slide. Just want to be clear, the waste management or wastewater, I assume that was wastewater.
No, that's actually solid waste.
Oh, that's
our landfill solid waste.
Wastewater and water don't even show up in that. Is that because they're all electric? The energy is all electricity?
They are in the buildings and facility, and I will have a little breakout that will give a little bit more detail of that in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
So these are our emission trend over time. And you see we've a little bit of up and down, but we've been really successful in reducing our emissions 38% since our base year. That's more than, our community-wide emissions have come down 26%. We've made much greater gains in a shorter period of time for city operations. So that is, we are, to the question that was raised earlier, we are doing great work and making progress. With that said, emissions have been ticking up since the pandemic in 2020. Year over year, our energy use has increased. I take a look at this trend here, and then if you could flip to the next slide, you'll see how similar our energy use is with our emissions. And that's because our emissions are largely driven by our energy consumption. The emissions from solid waste and process and fugitive emissions are really a small sliver of our overall emissions. So we're going to focus on energy use here for the rest of this time. And you can skip to the next slide. This takes a look at our trends. We've been tracking energy back to the 90s, as Paul said, but it's challenging to access that data given the limitations in our systems. And so can pretty clearly get back to 0607. So here you can see the trend from some of our primary bureaus that are driving those that big facility number that Commissioner Angus was asking about. So you can see the top one there, and these colors are challenging to see, but the top line is our Bureau of Environmental Services. So that's our wastewater treatment plant, and most of that wastewater has to get pumped to the wastewater treatment plant. So there's a lot of electricity consumption that goes into that in addition to their operations. The darker line that's kind of green below that is the Water Bureau. So that is our water distribution system. Now the water is gravity fed to the city from the Bull Run watershed. So that is, there's no kind of cost to that conveyance in terms of electricity, but we do have areas of the city that are higher elevation where the water has to be pumped up to the West Hills, for example. So they do have electricity consumption for pumping.
The one note I'll add there is just when there are events in the Bull Run watershed and we're not able to pull water from Bull Run, we pump groundwater along the Columbia. And so you'll see, we're pumping water, drinking water out of the ground, and you'll see big spikes in our electricity use for water.
Yeah, and that's those
Is that what those spikes are?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And that was going to be my next talking point, Paul. Thanks. The other sectors, are pretty flat and much smaller. So we get that variability really comes from the water distribution system and the waste and stormwater management system. Next slide, please. This looks at our facility natural gas use. And here you can see kind of steady but high natural gas use from our Parks Bureau. And that is largely due to heating in our community centers, but most importantly, heating of water for our pools, which is a huge source of energy natural gas consumption for our park system, and one that is particularly challenging to decarbonize. That line, the dark line that you see increasing quite a bit there is the Bureau of Environmental Services. And they've had quite a few changes at their wastewater treatment plant in recent years that have required them to use more natural gas. They have pulled some boilers and co-generators offline and are currently consuming natural gas right now as they're in a transition process with updating their operations there. And you can see the rest of that natural gas consumption for the rest of our facilities is really pretty flat in comparison. Next slide. Lastly, I just want to talk briefly about our energy costs. Obviously, you know, another year of significant budget cuts, looking at where we're spending money on energy, I think is a really important thing for us to consider here. So energy costs have climbed 61% since the beginning of this chart, which is in 12-13. Which is really quite significant, especially you can see they really start ticking up there around the pandemic. And that's where electric and gas rates have started to climb in Oregon. And just in this last year from 23-24 to 24-25, we saw a 9% increase in our energy costs. And again, that is largely not due from us using significantly more energy, but because of the rates at the utilities that have gone up quite significantly. So, you know, I think there's a real compelling case here for fiscal responsibility, as Paul pointed out, and should be a part of this discussion. And with that, I think we have a slide, next slide, to open it up for any questions about the data.
5 minutes for question about the data. Anyone have questions?
I don't know how to use my hand right now.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Alina, she, her pronouns. I have a question on the energy use trend. Just as it's ticking up from 2021 onwards, I was wondering if there have been the hotspots identified, what is driving that increase in consumption, and if that's something that we're actively tracking.
Yeah, I mean, that, as I showed on some of the electricity and gas slides, our increased use in recent years from for the wastewater treatment plants, for natural gas has been a big driver, as well as just the amount of electricity they're using for pumping water. So those are that's the one kind of area that we've really seen grow the most. A lot of the other variation is dependent on how much water pumping from the groundwater system the Water Bureau is doing. And that was a little less in the last year of the inventory, so you're not seeing that too much in the most current year. The rest of the variability is just annual depending on weather, but that's not driving those increases. Anything else you'd add to that?
Just that I think we can get a lot more granular and a lot more detailed and have that information sort of on call rather than, you know, right now it would be an ad hoc, like combing through utility data to figure out what exactly is driving those increases. It's a bit more of a one-off process than it is operationalized.
Commissioner Jessica?
Hi, Jessica, District 1, she, her. Is the city eligible for, or has it participated in any SEM, strategic energy management programs?
Yes, and I'll let Paul speak to that because he's been involved.
Yeah, I actually think that is a bright spot in the city that we have been participating. So, well, again, Bureau specific. I want to say the Parks Bureau participated for many years. Our Environmental Service Bureau, Portland Water Bureau, Bureau of Fleet and Facilities have all been active participants in Energy Trust Strategic Energy Management. And really what that program does is sort of identify opportunities for energy efficiency and energy saving opportunities. I think what's difficult in SEM is if you do have major capital improvements or major HVAC or really big ticket items, they're harder to tackle just directly through the Strategic Energy Management Program if you don't have the funding to pay for those upgrades up front.
Thank you. Commissioner Luna?
Commissioner Luna, she, her. I'm wondering on the natural gas use, why parks are so much higher than some of the other categories. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that is really the pool heating for our large pools that we have at a number of community centers. It takes a lot of energy to heat that volume of water and keep it, at that right temperature. They also have water heating, for showers and other uses as well. So that's really driving that natural gas use. And obviously, they also use natural gas for heating those facilities.
Commissioner Angus, but we have 3 minutes.
That's just a quick follow-up. So, why aren't we using heat pump water heaters for the pool system and the showers?
I think it's a really good suggestion. And there have been discussions, and leave it at that unless Vivian has something she wants to share.
Well, I can imagine one reason might be that they are more capital intensive to install upfront than continuing to buy gas, which is one of the reasons people keep buying gas. And the city is doing it also.
Okay, one more question, Commissioner Dana.
Thank you, Commissioner Dana, her District 4. Thank you, Paul and Kyle, for the presentation. I was curious about just the city's overall square footage footprint and how it's changed over time, and if it's something that I would imagine there's new buildings that are being either redone or there's maybe some construction, but how that is impacted by kind of tracking energy use intensity. And then what you anticipate kind of with policy sort of being able to influence both the management of existing buildings as well as kind of new construction and how that will potentially change kind of energy use intensity.
Great question, Commissioner Dana. Most of that, I think we should put a pin in for the discussion with Paul in the next section, because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. I will note, though, that we don't build a ton of new facilities. Some new construction here and there, and certainly upgrades and retrofits to older facilities, but we don't do a lot of new construction, at least not in the 20 years that I've been here.
Thank you, everyone. And just about time for a break. Next slide, please. So at 7 o'clock, we take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back to continue with municipal energy strategy parts 3 and 4, I believe. So see you all in 10 minutes. For our operations, yeah. Don't know. How can I test it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay, we're back. Welcome back. Thank you for the first half of the meeting and the briefing you've given. Now we'll move on to the next part. Next again. There, now we'll continue our briefing with Paul and Kyle. This second half will include more of the meatier discussion that we talked about, as what we can do as the next steps as a commission. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Just making sure this is on. It is, and I'll try not to like turn my head too much because I think my audio cut out once or twice earlier. Yeah, so we're gonna get all the way in. I think you guys had some wonderful questions early on, and sorry to punt to a little later, but we're gonna get into it now. So next slide here. I'm really gonna present a centralized approach to our energy management here. And like any good bureaucrat, I've got a 4-part proposal for you all. So these 4 bullet points, really think of this as policy, data, contracting, and funding. So the policy is, a reestablished city buildings policy. Data is organizing our energy information and making it really work for us. The contracting is an energy savings performance contract, which is a specific type of contract that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And funding, finally, just investing in our facilities. Okay, so the first one here, reestablishing policy. I alluded to this earlier, but our city green building policy was last updated in 2015. So it's 11 years old at this point. And it actually really only applies to new construction. So it does very little to govern our existing buildings. It's a really heavy emphasis on LEED certification, which is good and has flexibility. But overall, I think this is in dire need of an update. And this policy update presents an opportunity to really realign with our net zero targets. That's our overall climate goal, is to get to emissions reductions and to get to net zero. And so our buildings policy should say so. It's also an opportunity to reinvest in energy efficiency and to set that sort of policy direction that we want to promote grid interactivity and help our utilities get to those emissions goals. At its core, this green buildings policy is a lever. It's a policy lever that helps us really implement these ideas in both new and existing buildings. It's an opportunity to establish an all-electric policy, again, for both new and existing buildings. I feel fairly strongly that it could require energy audits, that it helps us dovetail with this energy saving performance contract that we'll talk about in a little bit. I also think what an opportunity to accelerate those, on-site solar and storage opportunities that you all asked about. I'll just say that, green building policy can be a little bit of a catch-all, and that I think there are really other valuable work streams that can be incorporated into this. So Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has made some progress on embodied carbon. And I think a buildings policy is a great place to house some of that work and think about the carbon of the materials that we use and how, if we're deconstructing a building or if we're demolishing a building, that carbon impact of those materials as well. I think our electric vehicle strategy, our net zero fleet strategy, and how we integrate vehicles with buildings is an important component to consider. And I think certainly resilience is another very important component that we need to be thinking about in the lens of our buildings and our facilities. I'll just give some credit where it's due, that a recent example from Oregon Metro, thank you, Commissioner Dana, for passing I think it's the Sustainable Buildings and Sites policy from Metro at the end of 2023. Is a really fantastic example. And I think that the city could look to beg, borrow, and steal some of that policy elements in adopting our own green buildings policy. Okay, so that's policy. Let's move on. We're going to talk about data and organizing information. So an energy management information system, sometimes called an EMIS for short, is sort of this umbrella term for software that can organize and optimize energy management. So like our buildings, all of our utility accounts and billing is managed individually by bureaus and sometimes by multiple staff people at different bureaus. Once a year, I get data directly from our 3 utilities and I compile it all into a spreadsheet. It's about 1,200 utility accounts, and I think the spreadsheet is 10 years old. And we get an annual snapshot of our energy use data. That's the only annual really look that we have. And despite how well Kyle presents and organizes all that information, it's a very cumbersome process and I'll say not ideal. The table on the right here, shows that energy consumption. This is not just buildings and facilities. This includes our streetlights. This is really all of the accounts. But energy costs topped $19 million this past fiscal year. That electricity use is about 120 million kilowatt hours, is equivalent to about 10,000 homes a year. And that gas usage of about 2 million therms is somewhere in the range of about 3,000 homes a year. I also put our estimated emissions on there, just for a frame of reference. But I really want to just drive home this point that an energy management system is an opportunity to organize all of our energy consumption and all of our billing for city operations. And it gives us an opportunity to take this data-informed approach for how do we plan our facility investments and to take a better look at what are those big facilities that are driving our consumption. Long-term, it also has this vision that we could have a sophisticated building automation system and building optimization that turns up or down when the grid needs capacity, so that we have grid interactive technology within our buildings. Today, we really don't take a big picture or holistic view outside of this annual snapshot. Again, the individual bureaus do great work with what they have, but this big picture is what we're missing. So this gives an opportunity to sort of think about key performance indicators and increase visibility. We don't track our monthly consumption at a city level. We don't really track the impact of utility rate increases outside of the slide that Kyle just showed us. So again, there's a lot of opportunity, and I want to just on the next slide give you an example from Portland Public Schools. So this is a dashboard that Portland Public Schools has with their energy management. And you can flip through, really select any facility, any school, any year. You can see the electricity usage, the gas usage, the water usage, and the costs. You can see the energy use intensity of any facility in their portfolio. You can see the solar production if they have on-site solar. This is the type of accountability that I think Portlanders really envisioned in the new form of government, and this is the type of accountability that I would like to strive for with our own portfolio of facilities. Next slide here. Okay, so an energy saving performance contract. This is the procurement, right? We talked about policy and data. This is procurement. This is the investment vehicle for our revamped buildings policy. So an energy saving performance contract, or ESPC, is a state approved procurement pathway. So the state of Oregon adopted this in 2008 as an alternative contracting method. It's also already in city code. I'm not sure exactly when we adopted this in city code. But really, this is an opportunity to sort of streamline the procurement. This is a very common practice. So these types of contracts are in place at various public agencies in the state of Oregon. The Port of Portland, Portland Public Schools, Multnomah County. The state of Oregon basically certifies private companies as energy service companies to do this work. Okay, but what was an energy saving performance contract? I didn't really say. It's a design build contract. This is normal. This is how we sort of think through retrofits and execute upon them. Again, by streamlining this, it can minimize and really give bureaus the opportunity to be turnkey in how we do energy work. Again, today, if we want to do a renovation or a retrofit, new HVAC, every single one of those procurements is an individual solicitation, and it takes countless staff hours to write that work, to award, to review the applications, and finally award that work. Okay, third bullet here, financing mechanism. So this is another really characteristic element and an important piece of an energy saving performance contract. An energy saving performance contract guarantees energy savings over the lifetime. And so that energy savings has financial savings as well. And the contract allows you to use those financial savings for the 15 or 20 years of that energy measure to pay for the thing up front. So it really is a unique financing mechanism. I also, on the right-hand side here, is a sort of piloted and demonstrated success that we have within the city of Portland. So Portland Parks and Recreation piloted an energy saving performance contract, and they put about $1 million into phase one. So this is reflecting phase one of their work. And with that work, they were able to do some lighting improvements, some water saving measures, I think a pool pump, and some minor HVAC improvements at different community centers. And you'll see some of the metrics here in terms of dollars saved and therms saved. And I also want to just point out that they hit a workforce metric, a subcontracting metric here of 40% minority, women-owned, and emerging small businesses through their work with an ESPC. Okay, the final bullet here, and sorry, this is a lengthy slide, but I think it's an important one, is that the energy saving performance contract is an excellent tool to help the city meet the state of Oregon's new building performance standards. So this requirement at the state level says that certain buildings will have to meet certain energy use intensity targets. We have to improve our energy efficiency in our buildings. The state of Oregon says so. And an ESPC can then do the audits, it can identify the appropriate measures, and then we can do the work to meet those state standards with this type of contract. Next slide. So I just thought that this is from the US Department of Energy. I thought they hit the points really well. I think I covered this. I was a little verbose in doing so, but really, again, extending the capabilities of existing budgets. That's that financing mechanism I talked about. Tackling deferred maintenance, avoiding disruption from our equipment failing. It's an opportunity to improve indoor air quality and improve our indoor environment, like our temperature, our lighting through these contracts. Obviously, energy saving is in the name, so stop wasting energy dollars. We could use this contract to reduce our emissions and actually promote electrification within our own buildings. Certainly, we could use this contract to improve the resiliency of our community centers and our community hubs. And then again, the create jobs metric that I mentioned at the end there as well. Okay, let's keep going. So we talked about policy, we talked about data, we talked about contracting. This is really about the funding, that much of this work really does hinge on allocating funding to accomplish this important work. So I want to just say, we know that cost-effective energy efficiency pays for itself over the lifetime of that upgrade. It also immediately reduces our energy spending and reduces ongoing maintenance. It's fiscally responsible. We also know that there's this urgent need to develop resilient spaces for our community to respond to heat, smoke, severe weather, extreme cold, power outages, and potentially other catastrophic disasters. So our climate emergency work plan action items, that RH1 and RH2, outline this need and this vision to have our 6 largest community centers be resilience hubs, and also says that every neighborhood in Portland should have battery and solar somewhere in the neighborhood. I'll state the obvious here, I guess, that the Portland Clean Energy Fund could be a potential funder here. I have it listed on this slide, that this could be a key action in our next climate action plan or in the climate investment plan that PCEF is going to be working on. While there are many, many opinions about how PCEF funding should be used, I will just gently make the case that I think public-facing community resilience hubs is a laudable outcome. I would also sort of argue that to date, I think PCEF has underinvested in city facility work. And just by way of comparison, I'll name that the Portland the Climate Friendly Public Schools program, PSEF funded at about $120 million. And so they are doing building energy improvements through an energy saving performance contract in our public schools. And that's sort of how I got to this proposal here on the screen of maybe 10 or 25 million as a rough number. Let's go to the next slide. So I want to just transition out of the weeds and out of the details there a little bit, and kind of recenter us back with a vision statement that's a bit of a mirror of the problem statement that we started with. That a centralized energy strategy can really advance this portfolio of grid interactive buildings that are efficient and that are resilient, that advance our decarbonization goals and also provide direct community benefit. So that's the vision that I'm hoping to strive towards. And another slide of just recap of this centralized approach. I really want to just hit this, that like the first one is a policy action, and it likely requires city council's involvement. But the next two are just procurement actions, procuring software to manage our energy information and procuring a contract to do this type of work. And then finally, it's a budget allocation. But in a nutshell, like these four things can happen simultaneously, or they could happen in sequence. But regardless, the policy and the procurement pieces kind of set the stage to get a robust funding allocation and to prioritize this work. And I think, yeah, Q&A on this section before we talk about like potential commission actions, but happy to take any questions or clarifications. I went a little fast there, but hopefully that four-part proposal was helpful.
Commissioner Gregg?
Commissioner Greg Ratsinas, thank you again, Paul. I guess a clarification, the ESPC, you said it's already in the city code and usually obviously being used successfully by the Parks Bureau in a pilot, sounds like more like a pilot fashion. What's the obstacle to keep the city administrator from applying this more broadly to other bureaus and agencies right now?
It's a very good question. So our Portland Parks and Recreation did pilot this and has done 2 different phases of it, or used the ESPC contract that they have twice. We recently, the Portland Water Bureau took an interest and solicited and awarded work as well for an energy saving performance contract. But because of sort of procurement technicalities, Water Bureau was not able to use the contract that Parks had. And they were also not able to use a cooperative contract that the Port of Portland had. So I think to your question, it's sort of a technicality. And it is something I would like our central city to really look at and see that opportunity that we have demonstrated success and we can do this work.
Any other questions? Commissioner Angus?
First, I would just like to say, I think the idea of designating the community centers as resilient hubs is a very good one, especially if it could be paired with potentially with community solar where there's public space available or they can be leased or used. My question goes to the performance saving contracts. I ask this having been on the marketing side of those. There is always the risk, and it's a greater risk with older buildings, that the retrofit costs end up being significantly higher than for newer buildings, and that energy performance private contractors, it's not that even the best ones can cream skim because they have to in order to make the thing pencil out. And I guess where my question is going is, I wonder if that's the best place to put limited city resources, if we have limited city resources, as opposed to, for example, some of the operations like the water wastewater pumping systems where those are a retrofit on a more regular basis and can potentially be upgraded to much more efficient equipment more frequently. So the question is sort of broadly, where within the city is the biggest bang for the buck it's not necessarily in retrofitting older buildings.
Yeah, I think that's a astute point. And Vivian mentioned the citywide asset management strategy that this has to nest within. I also think there's sort of a real estate strategy that this should nest within. So I'm really focused on just the energy consumption. But to your point, I think I agree. And I think what's difficult today is that those high value bang for your buck opportunities are done today as one-offs, and they're done when we get to sort of the point of failure. But we also don't have really existing contracts in place that are easy and turnkey and make that quick to do. And that's, centralizing this umbrella contract gives that opportunity that we could do multiple things all at the same time. We could do the high value measure, we could do some lighting, we could do a water heat, many different measures all at the same time and package them together.
Yeah. So I'm gonna follow up.
Someone else has a question.
I'm sorry?
Someone else has a question.
Oh, fine, then I'll wait.
Commissioner Garrett?
Alternate Garrett, Division 2, he, him pronouns. In regards to investment in the city facilities, one of the things that you mentioned was retrofitting some of those larger community centers. Was there a specific reason that there was, and it doesn't have to be this specific, but that it was 6 out of the 9 facilities rather than all of them? Just curious if it was in regards to like difference in energy savings, or if it's specifically to like the communities that they serve, if it's further out in District 1 or other parts of the city.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's actually what's in our climate action plan. And so I think, and I could be mistaken, I might look at Kyle here for some help, but that they're actually just larger facilities and sort of the primary 6 versus doing all of them. But I would suggest, I don't see why not all of them. But that's the language that was formally adopted in the climate emergency work plan.
Quick, because we have to move on.
Yep, understood. So this is just a follow-up. I appreciate the sort of point of replacement as a key point in evaluating equipment. But one of the lessons we learned in the energy efficiency game very early on is, that's not necessarily when you wait to replace your refrigerator. You don't wait till it goes out. Even more, your gas furnace. You wait until the economics and the energy calculation and now the carbon calculations say it's time to replace that equipment, even if it might run for another 10 or 20 years. This goes back to our earlier exchange about heat pumps to heat up the water at the swimming pools. Yeah, you don't wait till the natural gas furnace goes out to make that kind of a decision. So that's just by way of, I guess, my own cautionary note for your policies.
Commissioner Angus, I think that our colleagues who work on transportation would heartily agree with your point there. And that's the same appeal that they've been making to our city council, especially when we're looking wholesale at all of our infrastructure as a city at this point.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Okay, we can move on to potential commission action.
Yeah, so this is quick. Honestly, I think this is 2-3 slides maybe, and really meant to be discussion. So I've put on a slide here this next, yeah, thank you. Just to differentiate policy actions and then sort of advisory or advocacy venues that the SCC could engage in, loosely related to municipal energy that we've talked about today. So some of these policy actions may be items that the Policy and Implementation Committee elects to take on. Some of these could be items in the next climate action plan. Others may be staff-led or council-led that the commission can support and help guide. Things like throughout here are the green building policy, obviously, all electric policy that could be done first and later incorporated and nested within that green building policy. I put, data center standards here, just they're saying that data centers is kind of Wild West. And if we want to lean into how we want to think about that in our community, there's potentially a role for the SCC to play there. We mentioned it briefly that, looking at that climate justice audit and some of those recommendations, One that I mentioned on this slide is climate budgeting. And then advisory and advocacy. So, this commission has both advisory and advocacy roles with our city council and city administration, both formal and informal. I think that the Oregon Public Utility Commission is a excellent place for advocacy. And, if the commission wanted to get more invested in the proceedings at the Oregon Public Utility Commission, that's something certainly I'd be happy to share more information on. And to your earlier point, Commissioner Angus, I had utility accountability on this slide that I do think having, the utilities here to share their plans and to ask direct questions of the utilities could be a good place for advocacy. And then finally, sort of some bookends are looking ahead to our 2027 legislative agenda, informing the city's legislative agenda, or even leaning in and speaking as a body during the next legislative session could be an option as well. So next slide. I did a very cursory evaluation. This is pretty informal. Of those same policy actions, green building, all electric, data centers, climate budgeting, and advocacy, and really this is rudimentary, looking at the cost, the climate benefit, the community benefit, and the complexity of these different things. So just to explain the slide, a check mark here is that it's inexpensive, or it's high value, it's simple, and those are in green. The sort of squiggly lines or wavy lines are just moderate. They might be moderate cost or moderate benefit. Oh, sorry, I just realized that the colors came out a little weird on the version online or in the room. So yeah, sorry about all the yellow on the slide here, but really differentiating the symbols then. So the squiggly lines are meant to be moderate, and the only real yellow one is those upside down question marks of climate budgeting might be fairly complex within the city. So just naming that, and again, apologies for the color coding here. But this is by no means formal or set in stone, but rather something to sort of react to and to promote discussion. This is my last formal slide for today, and just really wanted to tee this up on what next steps and what actions, what things the commission here might want to grab onto and sink your teeth into a little further.
Okay, so this is where we talk about what are the kinds of things you want to see us do. Or if you have any other questions, you could still ask those, of course. But do we have any comments or clarifying questions at all? And just to know, when we were talking about advocacy and influence, we saw the chart of the different places we have advisory and advocacy roles. And just to remind you, the first two, city council, city administration, that's really where we have the advisory role. The bottom three, advocacy, we don't really have advisory role within those. Just so it's hard to differentiate sometimes, but the first two, city council administrations, who were advising. Commissioner Gregg.
Commissioner Greg Racinas, I guess for the sake of discussion for any of us, maybe tee up the idea of the green building policy and, the economic aspect of that as well. Clearly, as we talk about rising rates as well, I'm not sure, you said 19 million in annual electrical utility cost a year or two ago. Maybe in the current year, it'll be more than that, I expect as well, and not due to more usage, maybe just due more to rising rates as well. And rethinking the policy to make it maybe not rethink it, maybe make it more inclusive, to have affordability and economics and budgeting come into this as well. So it's more of a selling point, makes a broader push for it. If we're going to push for this building policy to apply to all buildings existing and move forward, to include the economic aspect front and center. I think the vision statement, use the word efficient, which I guess is the way to say saves money. But it could be more direct about more economical, and it could, because that money saved is money that can be invested elsewhere by the city in much needed areas. And I think that's part of one of the takeaways that often gets not as talked about in these climate discussions, is the opportunity cost loss of not doing this is money that can't be used elsewhere. So I'll just throw that out there for discussion, that aspect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and with that, with the green building program, I recall you saying that was mainly for new buildings, right? But there are places even locally where we could borrow from to expand to other buildings. So that's definitely one place. I worked in incentives many, many years ago, and incentives were given out based on how quickly you can get your money back within a certain amount of time by making certain improvements. And there were projects that ended up getting no incentives because fixing it would pay for itself super fast. So they didn't need an incentive. You should just do it. I don't see a lot of that happening within the city because there are a lot of places, if 82% of our buildings, 82% of emissions are buildings, there should be a lot of places that we can improve. And improvements come with payback costs. Elected officials have a hard time seeing past their next election. I'll just say that. Commissioner Stephanie?
Commissioner Stephanie, District 3, she, her. I understand potentials at the advisory and advocacy level in the abstraction, city council, city administration. So I'm wondering if staff, maybe Vivian especially, could give us some idea of the channels through which advice would flow. How do you imagine? It seems a bit cumbersome for us to have something presented to the commission only once a month and then voted on and then back to Vivian and then back to the council. So we want to be also efficient in our communication. So is there some ways we can improve on some of that as well? I mean, especially given that we just lost the climate committee on the city council. So any good ideas?
Thank you, Commissioner Stephanie, for the question. I think that you're exactly thinking of you're pulling on the right thread here to think about. So I'll offer this as an example, since we've already introduced the concept of how to advance and update a green building policy. I could foresee an example of this could be that the commission and city staff could work together to start developing this policy. And this may happen in the policy and implementation committee, for example, as being one place in which there could be some active, dedicated work to that. And then ultimately, this work would need to be advanced by a member of city council. That would take likely both advocacy, or rather coordination, between the Sustainability and Climate Commission and leveraging my role and giving me a clear directive to work directly with city council on trying to find a pathway for that. Of course, they are the ultimate deciders and decision makers. We always see ideas go to city council and then have their own bent to it and desires to it. And then eventually the outcome of that could be an update to city policy, update to legislation to make it possible.
That's very helpful. And I'm sort of imagining it means showing up in some different ways besides just at the monthly meetings.
Yes, Commissioner Stephanie, that could be an example. But again, don't forget, we are seeing a new commission structure that is coming out of this current city council. So this is an arena in which we're just going to have to see how things work and continue to uplift ideas to city council to implement them.
Yeah. One thing I would like to have a discussion about too, especially once we get the policy committee going, because some things are going to take that path that we were just talking about. Some things are going to take the path of ending up on a climate plan eventually. Some things will be completely staff led and won't need as much of our help. But I want us to discuss where we put most of our efforts, because we are limited in our time, in staff time, and where do we spend more time? Advocacy or in advisory? And I'm not saying we only do one or the other, but we should discuss where we're going to put more of our effort, because there might be more bang for our buck, so to speak, as far as our work goes in one area or the other. So I think that's a conversation we should definitely take. Sure, Angus?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, Paul, just for the record, I put my check marks in approximately the same place you put yours, which is to say, I think that that one of the recommendations this commission could make to the city council by way of a proposed city policy is that the city set a schedule for going all electric. And that, yeah, that's initially all electric in city operations. And I'm not sure that that's gonna be a big lift since, I would imagine that apart from the swimming, the pools, the community centers, we are mostly electric, right, the city? Or do we have gas heat in some buildings? Okay, well, then there's more to it than that. And that would also be a signal, I think, to the rest of the city, and we ought to make it a signal to the rest of the city that, that phasing out the combustion of fossil fuels and replacing them with electric technologies that are decidedly more efficient, is ought to be, is a city policy and ought to be, a city resident policy as well. And that links pretty directly to, I think, my much earlier comment of the evening, which is bringing the utilities over here and asking them to present and being able to put questions to them by way of moving their part of this electrification process along faster is part and parcel of that. So that's advocacy with respect to the utilities. Then it's also advocacy on an all electric policy with respect to the city council. And I can have my third, fourth, and fifth points as well, but I won't for right now. I would just add one last comment, with respect, Greg, to yours, and that is that I think it would be worthwhile to have a systematic evaluation of what it would cost to bring how many buildings and which buildings up to green standards or net zero standards, because I suspect we will discover that there's a wide differentiation, from the most difficult building to the easiest one. And, this is one where we ought to be doing the easiest ones first. But with that caveat, I would also agree with your point.
Thank you, Bishop. I know that this conversation that we're having actually at City Council a few months back, and they had presentations, and Commissioner Councilor Novick had questions about electric versus gas, because some of the data being presented showed that gas actually had a lot less emissions. So I'd like to get all the data ourselves so we could see that too. I know they asked for more information. I don't know what came from that. Commissioner Nora?
Commissioner Nora, she, her. Too close to the mic. Just trying to be responsive to Commissioner Charity's request, just be closer. Appreciate the prompt, Co-Chair Jose, in terms of, how do we really start digging into what to prioritize as a commission, and the lens of, does it make sense to lean in more so to our advisory versus advocacy capacities? I hope we can consider what that balance looks like. And I do think I'm very eager for us to lean into our advisory role, and where we can hopefully more directly influence and support progress at the city level. But of course, keeping an eye toward where are those advocacy opportunities that can directly support progress at the city level. So like addressing barriers to clean energy deployment or transmission capacity to achieve our HB 2021 goals. I think with that as well, I recognize we're all still feeling out, our role as commissioners. And while I completely agree with Paul and the critical role of the Oregon Public Utility Commission, it is also somewhat notoriously a challenging space to engage. And so I think the barriers to entry there, and going back to, bang for our buck, that might be one where we choose to focus more so on the utility accountability and engagement and kind of direct opportunities for progress there. I guess all to say, I am, with all of that in mind, excited about these first two, really digging into the green building policy and all electric policy. Where can we support the city in leading by example? And I'm eager for the policy committee to return back to kind of the full slate of possible recommended actions beyond just how do we, electrify and support efficiency within our building stock, but think about, citywide policy, building code requirements, et cetera. I have more questions on the data center piece, but I'll check for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Nora. Just to little time check, we have about 5 more minutes. I'm gonna try to get to all the 3 that are left, but if anyone comes up with more questions, feel free to write them in the chat or send them to Elaine so we can pass them on. Commissioner Charity?
Hi, yes, this is Commissioner Charity. I also appreciate the question between advisory and advocacy, and I think it really just depends on the policy that we decide to take on in the Policy Commission, because different goals are going to have different needs. And it would be really hard to say which area we would lean more into now without knowing what policy we're trying to advance, and where the barriers are to that advancement. And so once we have a better idea about what those would be, then we could really dig into which ones of those areas and where the venues are that we should be doing that. I also echo some of what Commissioner Norris just said. I in my day job work pretty extensively at doing advocacy at the Oregon Public Utility Commission and have a lot of experience there. And I would be very hesitant, I think, for this group to get involved there at this stage, not to say never, but the learning curve to be effective at the OPUC in any kind of advocacy effort is really, really steep. And the process of how decisions are made there is very, very slow. So it might be when if we're advancing a policy as a commission that needs to have conversation there, maybe that's where you start to think about who can we work in coalition or partnership with groups or environmental justice groups or other groups that are more adept at understanding how to navigate those systems, and that we wouldn't have to do some of this alone. The work we do at the OPUC is always through coalition because it's needed. So just to think about, how we understand not just the arenas we want to work in, whether it's advisory or advocacy, depending on the policy, but who our potential partners could be within that. Because there are a lot of groups that would support potential policy recommendations and policy goals of this commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Charity. And I guess that is 2 ways to look at it. We can do it by policy. We can decide these are priority policies and we're going to go after these regardless of where they fall, advisory. Or we could say we'd rather focus on this or this and then focus only on policies that fit advisory or advocacy. There's 2 ways to do that. Commissioner Leah?
Commissioner Leah, she, her. I agree with what Commissioner Nora and Commissioner Charity were saying about focusing more on the advisory side of this commission. And this is a question for Co-Chair Jose, but what would advocacy work as a commission look like exactly? I just wanted to define that really quick.
Yeah, I think for us, it'd be sharing our thoughts to people and what we wanted them to do. It's all about influence, right? We have a lot less influence. I agree with what everyone's been saying. I'm trying not to say what I think, but I agree that we should lean heavily into the advisory role because I think we can have a lot more influence and more impact that way. That's my own, I'm not saying we shouldn't write a letter to like the commission, the utility commission or legislature or whatever that we want to do some advocacy, but less effort there and spend more effort where we think we could do more change personally. Commissioner Dana, this will be the last one.
Thank you. thanks for the presentation and the policy recommendations, or at least commission actions. I think I just wanted to note that I really support all these different efforts, and I appreciate also the call out of Metro's policy. It was a lot of work and it took a long time. And just from the aspect of policy development, just to note that that's a very critical piece, but with stakeholder engagement and involvement and engaging all the bureaus, policy development is a very laborious process. And I'm curious, like, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but how to either tease out pieces of that, whether it's like an all-electric fossil fuel kind of a ban on new development, pieces that could maybe be implemented on a faster timescale than a full policy. If that would be something that we could maybe consider or recommend as a commission. And also just, this is just an idea to point out in California and many places with city government, there's a lot of effort around consolidated work weeks, or kind of 4 days for some, buildings, and then and other kind of city bureaus you'd be open for only certain select hours, so you can shutter and kind of have dark buildings on certain days, along with a telecommute policy. I know that there's interest in trying to activate the downtown, and but there is a lot of benefit, and you could really see it in the data that showed the operational dip during like the pandemic years of how much energy use was kind of cut down. And so I think that's something that we could talk about, is just what could that look like for some of the non-essential buildings, and how to maybe stagger some of these different assets so that we can have dark days to reduce overall energy use and also allow for kind of that quality of life piece. But just wanted to flag that as an idea, but really look forward to kind of digging into these ideas further. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dana. Thank you everyone for your discussion, and thank you, Bing, Paul, and Kyle for your time and your expertise and being with us today. We look forward to the next steps the commission can take to make progress on our municipal energy strategy. Now we're getting to the end of the meeting. Yep. So please, commissioners, fill out the meeting feedback form that Elaine will send in Zoom chat right now. We always go through the form, make changes, decisions based on what you say, so please be thoughtful. Next slide, next slide. Our next regular meeting is April 16th. Before the meeting, please read the climate justice audit and the city administrator's response. I'm looking forward to reading that anyway, but it's also homework. Elaine's gonna send it out.
Riveting reading.
Elaine will send them out in the weekly high five. This is our chance to ask the city administrator about the report and staff about the city administrator's response. We will then finalize a commission response letter to the mayor, city council, and city administrator. Also, as a reminder, Earth in Motion, the Earth Day event, is on Saturday, April 11th, 12 to 3 at Park Rose Middle School. I will be in San Antonio, Texas, being sad that I missed it, so please go for me and have all the fun and to represent the commission and explore all the city programs and things that will be available. But thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. See you next time. Bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.